Hi, everybody. Welcome to Capital to the Coast BNI. My name is Mike Manning. Each week on the show, we bring you a local small business success story from BNI, anywhere from Raleigh to Wilmington and all points in between. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Between both regions, there are 41 chapters meet every week. Our goal is to help each other grow our businesses with weekly meetings. And our local small business success story this week is Royce Cormell with Honor Roofing. Royce is in the Cary Core Professionals group right now that meets on Thursday mornings at 9 o'clock. They're a core group getting ready to get near 20 members, and they'll launch you into full BNI chapter. Royce, how you doing this morning?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good, man. Glad to have you on the show. Core
Uh,
groups are fun. We'll get that in a second, but Royce is at Honor Roofing. He's relatively new there last August, but wears many hats. Sales manager, production manager, who needs what today because the company is a successful company in the area and it is growing. And so do you enjoy being able to do different things every day and every week?
yeah, absolutely. I come from majority of my time in the workforce has been in small businesses and working with small businesses. So having the flexibility to kind of wear hats and take care of problems as they come up, and that flexibility is most definitely something I enjoy.
All right, so your world is in roofing, and most homeowners have no idea what their roof looks like. They don't know, how often do I need to look at it? Like, what's the average life of a roof under normal conditions?
So I would say in general, it would probably be about 25 years
Okay.
would be the average life. But there's a couple factors that go into that. One would be the type of shingle that you have. If you have a three tab shingle, which is like that kind of repeating brick
Mhm.
pattern, that's what a lot of like new builders use and like newer construction homes because it's a little bit cheaper than the alternative. But those are engineered to last 20 years. But with North Carolina, we're tied for third on getting hit by the most hurricanes. So with that, the 20-year engineered lifespan doesn't actually make it to 20 years most often. So with three tab, you're looking at like 15 to 17 years before you start having major issues. On the other side of the spectrum, there's architectural shingles, which have like a discontinued like or uneven pattern. That's more common, I would say, and they have an engineered lifespan of 30 years. So you're expected to get around 25 to 27 years with that particular shingle. So an extra 10 years of lifespan for sure.
S-
And because of the hurricanes and whatnot, their wind resistance is a lot different too. So the three tab only is good for 70 to 80 mile an hour winds. The architectural is good for like 120 to 130 mile an hour winds. So there's a big difference on the durability of these shingles. But yeah, I'd say on average, if you're three tab, 15 to 17. If you're architectural, 25 to 27.
So tied for third, I thought would be about six. So I'm assuming Florida's one is Louisiana number two.
I want to say Texas is number two because
Ah,
they,
okay.
they take a majority of that coastline.
Okay.
And then yeah, I think it's either I think it's Louisiana. I
Yeah.
think we're tied for
Okay.
third with or something. Yeah, I think we're officially fourth, but it's very close.
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
as far as getting hit by that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get a lot of storms coming in here, and then it also doesn't help that with Appalachians it kind of rebounds off of that,
Mhm.
so some places get double hit.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. And so
um,
most homeowners, if they've been in the house 15 years, they probably have had assuming they don't have a big hurricane or big storm,
mhm,
they probably haven't thought much about their house because there's no leaking. And if there's no
correct.
leaking from anywhere, I guess we assume everything's working, right?
Yeah, I mean the biggest warning sign that you can see is missing shingles, but
Mm,
usually like if you're to the point where there's missing shingles, that's kind of where you start thinking about maybe getting insurance involved. But like if you have a bad storm, you know, a lot of people don't even realize to just like look up.
no,
you know,
we do not.
and if the ideally you'd want to find the leak before it gets big, right? Because once it gets big, if it's showing up on the inside of the drywall, like on your ceiling, then it's already like 10 times worse on the roof itself, right? because it takes a decent amount of water to actually go through insulation and go through drywall to show up on the bottom. You might be leaking well before that, or it might be taking a lot longer. Usually, by the time that it leaks on the inside, you're already seeing like pretty serious
Mhm.
wood rot and other issues on the roof, the decking itself.
So,
So
on average, should we once a year, just best as we can, get a good look at our roof? Some people are happy to climb up on their roof, but others that aren't, they just kind of like walk out to the street or walk a distance away from the house and kind of look in at it. Should we do anything like that?
Yeah, I would say like I mean, once a year doesn't really make as much sense as after a big storm,
Okay,
because that's where after the big storm is usually where that damage comes through. On and as far as looking at the roof that goes, like you might not even, a lot of issues that I find, at least as far as leaks go, don't even show up on the outside really. So
okay,
I'd say you'd be way better spending your time. Like if you only have a limited amount of time, look at the inside of the attic where and see if you see spots that are suspicious there, because that's going to tell you a lot more information. Because like my first step for leak diagnostic is to take a look at the attic, and you'll
okay.
you'll see where water's coming in there a lot easier than you would. Sometimes the issue is invisible from the exterior.
Mm.
So, and you
It,
want to find it before it messes up your interior anyway. So,
yep.
finding the leak in the attic is most definitely the best way to do that. So, doing that like once a year, especially after big storms.
All right, folks, that was your first good tip of the day right there. After a storm, the next storm we have, go up into your attic and look around and see if there's anything different. And then we'll have Royce's number on the screen throughout the show. So please give him a call. They come out, take a look for you. But this is one of those things where you need a professional to do it. If there's anything that needs to be done, nothing against everybody's Uncle Billy, but Uncle Billy, if he's not a roofer, don't call him out to look at something to patch stuff up. So, all
Yeah.
right.
One
So,
little tip on that:
yep.
look for discolored insulation. Typically, like if
Ah,
you have white, like blown in insulation, an area that's leaking is going to be discolored, and probably matted down due to the
okay.
water laying on it. So, yeah, if you see that, that'd be your biggest tip as to something's going on.
All right, I'm even writing stuff down too. So, all right. So, growing a book of business into the roofing world, because you have one of those, and folks in BNI, we call them seats: the roofing seat, the real estate seat, so on and so forth. You have a seat where in our minds, we don't need you till we need you. So, who do you call on to build these relationships? So when we do need you, we know who to call.
Yeah. So, like, my biggest referral partners are people that work around these things. So you have like your PNC insurance agent. A lot of times, and I use this analogy a lot. If you have something wrong with your toilet, you call a plumber. If you have something wrong with an electrical outlet, you call an electrician. But for some reason, when people have an issue with the roof, the first person they call is insurance,
Yeah,
which is backwards in my mind. You should most definitely call the roofer first, but
yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of people, when they view an issue with the roof and they see neighbors getting their roof replaced,
mm,
on the insurance's dime, the first thing that they try to do is do the same thing, right? Who doesn't want a free roof? So insurance gets involved a lot more often when it comes to roof issues. So in that regard, PNC agents get a lot of calls, and for me, my benefit to them, or the benefit that I provide for them, is giving an honest opinion on whether or not a claim is a reasonable action, because claims only cover storm damage. And if there's no storm damage, like if
yeah,
it's an improper installation or something else that's going on, insurance is not going to help you with that. So that's why it's important to get a roofer involved first, because they'll be able to tell you whether or not a claim is reasonable or not. And let me tell you, most roofers will tell you if a claim is reasonable, because
yeah,
because that's part of their business.
yeah.
Um,
So
so
let's clean up a couple things on this for folks because we know the words. So PNC agent, folks, is property and casualty. It's the
yeah,
person that writes your home and auto. So always think of it
correct.
that way when you hear a PNC. And we always assume, Royce, that because we network, everybody has a Rolodex, which they don't.
Hmm.
So what I've learned from our insurance friends, folks, is if you do see something like that, if you know your agent real well, call your agent and say, "Hey, Mike, I got this leak. What should I do?" and then your agent will connect you to Royce. Royce will come out, and then everybody will have a conversation of, is this an insurance claim or just, 10 or 12 shingles, stuff like that. The mistake, I believe, Royce, if I've got this right, the mistake a lot of people make, and I would have done this long before I was in BNI as well, because I didn't know, is you automatically call your insurance company and put in a claim. And now you've
Correct.
got a ding. So that puts a ding on my insurance policy, doesn't it?
So when you file a claim, depending on the carrier, but that will follow you for the next 5 to 7 years. And there's a couple things that will happen because of that. Depending on the insurance company, you may have an increase in premiums, which I know everybody loves, right?
Yeah.
So don't, yeah, try not to file a claim just because of that. Secondly, when it comes to, let's say you're trying to buy or sell a home, well, you have a claim on your record, therefore trying to get insurance because you need insurance in order to get a mortgage. So that claim on your record will affect how much, whether or not a insurance company will actually approve your insurance, and also affect the rates that they're going to give you. And then I've seen in some situations, let's say you get a claim approved and it gets replaced. I've seen situations where after they pay you out for replacing the roof, some insurance companies have dropped their clients
Yeah.
because of that approved claim,
Yep.
because they no longer want to, basically pay for that. So it is there are most definitely risks involved with regards to filing a claim, and it's not always the right answer.
Yeah.
On the inverse, if you decide to pay for replacing a roof out of pocket versus going through insurance, so kind of the inverse happens. A, you don't have a claim record, so that makes all of those problems go away. And B, if you go back to your insurance company and say, "Hey, I replaced the roof out of pocket. Now it's a lower risk investment for you. Can I get a reduction in premiums?" And more often than not, they will do that. Now that's carrier dependent.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, but that's why it's important to get somebody that gives you those options and gives you the full story on what can happen, because there are most definitely people out there that don't and take advantage of that and not really give you the full story on what happens when it comes to working with insurance.
Yeah. And back to your point on that is we cannot assume an insurance carrier does not have to insure you if they choose not to. You may have to
Correct.
call 8 or 9 people. It's like with speeding tickets. You got 5 speeding tickets or 2 wrecks or something like that. They don't have to insure you. So be careful when you have situations like that. If you see a leak or something like that and you don't know a roofer, in general, you should know your insurance agent well enough that they know you. So if you call, they won't start a claim on you. They'll say, "Hey, let me connect you with Royce. He's going to give you a call, come out, take a look at it, and then we'll see what goes on from there."
Yeah.
But
A
that's
rule of thumb on that
yeah,
is, if you're calling a 1-800 number,
yeah.
don't.
Don't. That's an
They're
automatic
trained.
claim.
Those guys are trained to
Yep,
pull those claims in and get those claims filed, versus a more local agent. Like Farm Bureau, for example. Those guys are like local agents. They run
yep,
their own book of business, and when you call those guys, their interest is taking care of you first versus filing a claim.
yep,
It's a lot different process. Yeah.
yep. So when you go to these networking events and out to meet people and they find out that you work for a roofing company, what kind of reactions do you get from people?
Um, Sometimes, like, depending on the person, like you said, going back to the referral partners, PNC agents, they're usually, at first they're skeptical because there unfortunately is a bad stereotype that follows roofers, or trades in general. So they're always skeptical at first as far as that. But once you break that ice and they get to know you, it makes things a lot easier. But like real estate agents as well are good referral partners that
Mm,
get excited when someone like me walks in the door. And then also like property managers are also very good. And then, more recently, I've been getting into like working with HOA presidents and,
yeah,
people of that nature. But in general, like more often than not, the first time I go to any BNI chapter, at least somebody in that room's got a problem or knows
yes,
somebody that has a problem.
that
So
they
I'm like,
do.
oh, I need to talk to you.
Yeah,
So representing the trades in that manner, usually it's pretty receptive, of course. But yeah, I still have to fight the stereotype of
yeah.
uh, bad actors in the
Well,
roofing
and,
industry.
and you
But
know what though, but that's a good point. So let's talk about that for a second. After
mhm.
storms, and folks, you may have seen these in previous storms. We've had not a lot, but when we get a good one, we tend to get a real good one. You've had people knock on your door or call you, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, You just had a storm in your area. We want to come take a look at your roof. And it's not true with everybody, Royce, but they are looking to replace the whole roof, aren't they?
Absolutely. If you're getting door knocked, then they're most likely trying to go for a full roof replacement and get that claim filed. And they'll promise things like you're not going to have to pay anything but your deductible. And we'll get your new roof replaced. We did the neighbors down the road is a common thing that they would say. And in some cases, this all may be true. Maybe you have
Mm,
legit storm damage, right? But it's the times where they're kind of like riding that edge, or they're just kind of trying to get you to file a claim. Because at the end of the day, like if you file a claim because you listen to them, it doesn't affect them at all.
mm,
Like maybe they get like good news for them if the claim is filed, because if it gets approved, even if nothing crazy is going on, they get to replace a roof and make money off of that, regardless of whether or not it gets approved or denied. Because if you come back and be like, hey, it was denied, is there anything you can do? Then they're gonna be like, oh, well, that sucks,
mm.
sorry,
Yeah.
and just kind of go on their way. And it's not good for the customer, it's not good for the insurance company, because they're wasting time and resources to check out claims that don't need to be filed. And there's a lot of issues with that. But it's not just roofers either. Because there are insurance companies that use independent adjusters. And I've heard stories of independent adjusters, depending on how they get paid, um, can sometimes do the same things that roofers do. When it comes to manufacturing damage, is the best way to call it. Where they go up there, like a roofer, like, hey, you have some roof issues, and then they go up there, do an inspection for you, cause a bunch of damage, bending shingles, tearing shingles off, and be like, yep, look at all this damage, and basically fraud. That's basically fraud. It is fraud, and they try to get you to file a claim that way, because from a homeowner's perspective, you didn't really pay attention to it. They go up there, rip a bunch of shingles off, come back down and say, "Hey, look, you have missing shingles." You wouldn't know any better unless you would have never looked anyway,
Yeah.
unless you keep tabs on that kind of stuff. But most people don't. So, and then on the same side, you follow that claim. I've seen situations where adjusters uh, do the exact same thing that bad roofers do. So it really um, it's interesting that the industry is like that, but it's very much true that there are bad actors out there that have um, the intentions of causing damage just so that they can get that one extra roof sale,
Yeah.
regardless of the consequences on either side.
Yep.
Because
And just because I have roof damage doesn't automatically mean the entire roof needs to be replaced.
correct, correct. It's also wasteful. Going back to, the economies of scale. If you think about all these roofs that are getting replaced that don't necessarily need to be replaced, or got replaced because there were manufactured damage on the roof. Like you're talking about a large percentage of roofs that probably should have never been replaced. So how many, all those shingles basically gone to waste. Maybe they could have lasted another 5, 10 years
Mm,
with a small repair, and it just drives the cost of everything up over the course of time, especially as far as insurance is concerned. I know I've been told from multiple insurance agents that for every dollar of insurance, home insurance is sold, they pay out anywhere between $1.10 to $1.30 on that policy. So insurance companies do not make money off of home insurance.
yeah.
Um, so, and a lot of that is because they're replacing roofs more often than they should, and all those costs get turned right back to the customer at the end of the day. So it's not great for the industry, and it's not great for the homeowner.
Yeah, and like I said, some of us, even before I got into BNI, I mean, I'm like everybody else. I knew some people, but certain industries we don't have in our Rolodex or on our phone list, and I know roofers um, are probably like most industries. We don't know a lot of people in there. What am I going to hear from a bad roofer if they come knock on my door or give me a phone call?
Um, well, they're probably
Or
gonna
what
start
do
with
I
like,
need
hey,
to ask them? How about that? Let both ways.
well, the easiest way to stop them from damaging a roof, if that's what their intention is, would be to you can do an inspection, but you're not allowed to be on my roof. The good ones,
Oh.
the ones that are true, they should have a drone
Mhm.
or some other way of checking out the roof without physically being on the roof, because they can't do damage to your roof if they send a drone up. The drones don't do that. So
Nice.
I
Okay.
carry a drone. the reputable roofers will spend extra for that technology. And if they're honest with them, like, hey, just a very very simple question. I don't want you to get on my roof, but you're perfectly fine sending a drone up if you have. And if they don't have a drone, that means that their intention is to get on the roof. Well, something maybe somebody doesn't have it, but like you can weed out a lot of the
Mm,
bad actors by doing that, because if they have the technology to do it, aka the drone. I mean, drones are only $300. If you're a reputable roofer,
yeah.
that's an excellent tool to have. It means you don't have to get on the roof as much. You can check out issues, and take pictures and videos. And that's what I usually do. Is if I'm, doing some kind of inspection, I'll be, I'll send the drone up first, because if I can save myself from having to climb around on the roof, and I can identify the problem with the drone, that's it's safer for me. It's easier for the customer, as well. And then, that risk of doing somebody doing harm to the roof is pretty much negated, because if they can't get up there, they can't do the damage. And you know I followed up with showing you the pictures. I show pictures all the time to my customers, like, hey, this is exactly what's going on. This is what I'm thinking the issue is. This is what we can do to fix it. And that, communication there, those extra steps, is part of the reason why, I'm being successful where I'm at. It's because there is no question as to what the roof is, or what's going on with the roof. And it was damaged like that before I sent the drone up, not after, you know?
And that kind of communication gets you an introduction to their neighbor, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like when I'm done with a job, I send them an album of all the pictures before, during, and
Oh,
after the work done. A, for their records, and they can see exactly what's going on. Also protects us a little bit, because if we damage something, that's why we take pre-construction photos before we do work. It's like, oh, hey, you guys damaged my AC unit. It's like, oh, well, we took pre-construction photos.
yeah.
That was damaged before we did the work. Therefore, that was an issue well before we got there.
I you know,
So
I was
it
having a
goes both ways.
I was having a it's funny you say that. I was having a conversation with a painter last week. I was down in Wilmington doing some training. I was talking with a painter, and we got talking about before and after pictures and all that. And he had a client, a nice old lady, no idea what her intentions were, but uh, after they were finished painting, she brings her broken lamp. He comes back, he
Hmm.
comes for the final walkthrough, which you do, and she goes, "Yeah, you guys broke my lamp. Basically, what are you gonna do about it?" And he goes back into his camera, flips through. "Oh, you mean this one that's not broken, after we finished painting the other day? So, okay, good, yeah,
Yeah,
because they do
yeah,
before, during, and after walkarounds, and sadly,
correct.
you have to, but those those things matter.
It makes a difference, and it cuts out a lot of the
Yeah,
crap,
yeah.
basically, for lack of a better word.
Yep, and
Um,
my guess is
so
there's some pitched roofs that you just don't care to walk on either, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty comfortable all the way up to like a 10, 12, something along those lines. But those really steep pitches,
Yeah,
it's like, uh, it's scary, especially, if it's a metal roof. Like, those are even scarier,
yeah,
especially because there's not way slicker, as far as climbing on them goes. So, yeah, sometimes I utilize drones a lot, just because it's safer. And if I don't have to get up on the roof and do something, then I won't. Now, I will say, if I'm doing like an inspection or trying to do a leak diagnostic, my motivation to get on the roof is a lot higher,
yeah,
because I can't lift up shingles with a drone.
yeah.
I can't poke around and look underneath things with a drone. So, but for full replacements, I basically don't have to get up there.
Now
Because
yeah,
we can use satellite imagery to get measurements of the roof as well. So, like, if you're interested in a full replacement, I basically, I could technically do that from my chair. I can order satellite imagery from from a couple providers. They can give me all the dimensions of a roof, as long as, like, eve length, linear feet of gutters, if that's what you're looking for, along with the pitch and everything. And I don't even have to go up there with a measuring tape. So there's a lot of cool technologies, even with like the use of drones, where I can really limit how much I get up on to the roof. But there's some situations that require it. So.
and, there are a number of home services people that I've met that have, that guy, usually the husband, usually retired, that just follows them around, whether they're painting, pulling up carpet, whatever.
Hmm.
Do you
Hmm.
have anybody that asked if they can go up on the roof with you?
Every once in a while, I do, and I usually follow it up with, like, "Yeah, absolutely," but just I'm gonna clarify right now that I'm not responsible if anything
Yep.
happens. But like I usually try to be like, hey, I'll take pictures and video. I'll take a video while I'm up there and show you
Yep.
exactly what's going on. And usually most people have no interest in getting on the roof. It only happens every once in a while. But the only times I usually like am kind of okay with it is if it's like a super flat roof.
Yep.
But more often than not, I try to avoid that situation just because like I don't want to be if something does happen, you know,
Yep. And
I
and
want I
so
don't want to be involved.
yeah, so let's go back to the hurricane. You got me thinking on that, what you just said. So let's go back to the hurricane chasers. They
Hmm.
knock on your door. We all assume that every other business has insurance, and a lot of
Correct.
them, enough of them don't. So is that another question? Me as a homeowner can ask
Yes.
you if you knock on my door, A, do you have a drone? B, can I see your certificate of insurance?
Correct. And make sure you check the date on that because they could
Yes.
be riding around with uh something that says they have insurance, but if the date could be expired.
Yeah.
Or it could be old. Some people apply to get the insurance, get that sheet of paper for the next year, and then cancel the insurance. So
Oh, yeah. Okay.
sometimes like they might say it's correct in date, but they could have just canceled it as soon as they got it because as far as insurance goes, workers' comp and insurance for roofers is probably one of the most expensive
Mm,
policies that you can get. So for a lot of these guys, that's too expensive. So um, yeah, I would be very careful with that. I have a printed copy of our insurance GC license and that in my sales bag. So if anybody asks me that, I have a printed copy
yeah.
ready to go. But it would also be as simple as a lot of people won't take this extra step, but you can call the insurance provider that's on that document and say, "Hey, is this policy still active?"
Yep.
And they will be able to tell you. Um, so it's just it's
It,
small little things like that.
yeah.
So asking if they have a drone, if they have a copy of their insurance and licenses, and yeah, just like I'd just be hesitant about letting people onto your roof because that's
Yeah.
where a lot of those guys like to do their thing, which
Well, and
yeah.
I bring that up also because if you knock on my door and I assume you have everything in place in order, right? And you
Mhm.
get on my roof and you fall, that comes out of my homeowner's insurance, which is gonna jack up my rates if I got to pay for your broken leg, stuff like that. So there's a reason why anybody that's coming into your house, you should or on your property, you should ask them if they have insurance.
I'm not. I don't know. Is that the case? Because that'd be the first time I've heard of
Yeah,
that.
that's what
Although I'm
I
not too
heard a
familiar.
couple of years ago. I don't know if it's changed, but I believe the homeowner's on the hook for it. Um,
I don't know about that. I
okay,
don't
I'll double
think
check that.
that
Thank you.
doesn't seem like something that would be accurate. Although I would confirm with your, I
Okay.
would say, insurance
Yep.
agent on that. But like if I'm doing work on your house as a contractor, you know that
Well,
it doesn't make sense why that would fall underneath your home policy.
but if I'm
It should
yeah,
fall on the employer's workers' comp, if anything.
but if they don't have any. Yeah.
Oh,
So
if they don't
anyways,
have
yeah.
any, oh, I see what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah. So yeah,
Well,
I thought I articulated. Yeah, if they don't have any, it could fall onto you. So anyway, but just to ask for the drone, do they have a drone to look at your roof? They can't get on it,
mhm,
and then copy of your insurance. I like that. So
yep.
all right. So your previous jobs prior to this, a lot of them involved sales, meeting
Mhm.
clients, growing a book of business. What have you learned along the way? You're still relatively young. What are you learning along the way of growing that book of business?
I mean, I might be young, but I do have 9 years of
You
business
do,
development.
yes. Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
I spent a lot of time growing a book of business for different kinds of industries as well. So 3 years of that was like building materials and building material sales. Some of it retail, some of it B2B, and then another 5 was more like e-commerce sales and being like a distributor. All of it distributing
Yeah.
basically 8 years of distributor sales,
Good.
if
Uh,
that makes sense.
so
Um,
at Honor Roofing,
mhm.
what's a normal business development week like for you to grow that book of business?
So there's two ways to make money doing roofing. Option number one is to door knock. And my view on door knocking, I kind of avoid it to be honest because I don't like that sales process. Trying to talk to somebody you've never talked to before. There's that stereotype that follows roofers around as far as I'm just another guy knocking on my door. It's annoying. And uh, But the thing is with that, the way I view that is that yeah, I can get sales and business that way. But the second I stop knocking doors, the second my sales
Mm,
stops. So I have to constantly be doing that over and over and over again in order to do that. Eventually, you'll pick up like word of mouth and referrals through consumers, but that is a lot longer to kind of ramp up
yep.
that referral side of things. Um, on the other hand, and this is what where my expertise comes in doing business development, is working with other professionals that would refer you.
Mm,
So real estate agents, they buy or sell, if they're good, hopefully one or two homes a week, right?
yep.
Every time that they do that, if they have an inspector that comes out, a general inspector, and they check out the roof, and more often than not, you'll see something on that list that says get a roofing professional involved. I can go do an inspection for the real estate agent. So for me, growing the business side of my book of business is what I focused on. So going and doing networking events, meeting other professionals. I usually try to like a good thing that I like to do is go talk to an insurance agent, and then if I hit it off with them, say, hey, do you mind if I come speak to the rest of your insurance agent office?
Yep.
Right. So once I, establish communication with one guy, then I'm making communication with the whole office as a secondary. So it kind of expands on that. Because once prove to one person, that person, as soon as he speaks highly of you, it makes it a lot easier to talk to all the other insurance agents in that office. Property managers as well. They might own anywhere between some smaller ones like 50 homes all the way up to 1,000. And those guys are super consistent business because every time a storm happens, at least one of those houses is probably going to have a leak. So um just growing those kinds of relationships and getting involved, because like once you prove to a couple people that you do good work and you're honest as far as what happens, and you're reasonable with your pricing and your service is really good customer service, then it's really easy to just kind of follow in line and get introduced to other people, and grow that way. So my game plan is to establish a network of referral partners that will consistently give me business. Because once that's established, I don't really have to go looking for work anymore. It's just
Yep.
showing up on my plate because I have people that trust me and appreciate the work that I do.
Yep. And so, two things on that. One is we can't assume that every realtor and property manager is a go getter and they have a full Rolodex. So, you get in front of them and they're not, I won't we'll say they're lazy, but they just don't know a lot of people like, oh, great. Oh, Susie and Jim talk very highly of you. So, you're my guy now. But let's go
Correct.
back to the door knocking, folks. If you're listening and watching and you're a door knocker, knock on the door and take 3 or 4 steps back, maybe down on the first
Oh
step.
yeah.
So when I open my door, your face isn't right here. That's a
Yeah.
casual way. A lot of people are starting to do that. We don't get a lot of people knocking on our front door, but I'm much more inclined to talk to you if you've taken a step off my front porch onto the first step and we can have a conversation. But if you're standing 2 feet from me, I know that here comes a hard sales pitch.
Yep. So yeah, if you take a few steps back, that's huge. I got trained on that immediately. Like
Mhm.
first day in the job is as soon as you knock on the door, take a couple steps
Yep,
back.
yep.
Because like again, like if people don't know you're coming or don't know who you are, and you're right up in there, unfortunately there's a lot of bad things that could happen really quickly. But if you give that space to the customer, they're way more inclined to, have a conversation with you at least, or entertain the idea of a conversation. And
Y
then one other thing too, like if they have a leak or something along those lines and you get invited to the home, take your shoes off.
Yes. Thank you, thank you.
Like take your shoes off. Some people it doesn't matter. Some people it does matter. And I have won and lost deals from taking my shoes off at the door. So
But it's funny in business, and we all sometimes it takes a while to learn it because the situation hasn't presented itself. But it's those little things that people who truly want value will notice.
mhm.
And you always
Yep.
make sure you have clean socks on, but take your shoes off. And again, the people that appreciate value are going to like that. So that's another good tip. And it's yeah, you got to wear good socks. That's for sure.
Well, yeah. So yeah, taking shoes off is most definitely good because like if you think about it this way, if they're getting quotes on something, which a lot of the times I am competing
Mhm.
against other quotes,
Yep.
if you take your shoes off, go inside, check it out, and then the next three contractors that come behind you don't, and
Mhm.
track mud and dirt into the floor, like That's gonna be something that's gonna stick in their mind.
Yep.
You know, well more than any kind of promise of service
Yep.
or pricing goes.
Yeah.
So
And some people will put those, booties on their shoes or shoe covers, whatever you call them, and those are
mhm.
nice, but those could have been worn in another house, and they just put them in their back pocket, so taking shoes off clears up everything. And,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
does.
the odds of having dirty socks are slim, there's still gonna be somebody there, but odds of that are slim, so, no, I like those tips. Uh, we talked about 4 came on the show, and I saw that you were a line cook. Alright, you
Yes.
gotta give me your best story about being in the kitchen and where everything went wrong.
Well,
You ever catch anything on
so
fire?
no, no, I never caught anything on fire, which is great. We actually had a pretty safe kitchen as far as like we didn't have any crazy accidents or
Good.
anything crazy going on. Um, but I mean, I'd say where things get crazy are just during like the busiest times,
Yeah.
weekends, holidays, things like that, where there's a lot of moving parts, and it usually the bad like if everybody's there, it's great. But when you're working in a kitchen, especially in the kitchen, you've got your strong set of guys, and the worst scenario possible is you got a busy day coming up, and one of them calls out sick or
Ooh.
something along those lines,
Yep.
and now you're working with one less person, and there really isn't somebody else to like come in and pick up the slack because usually in on the line cook thing, because like a waiter can take over other tables for another waiter,
Mhm.
right? That's not crazy. But when you have specialized guys in a kitchen, and if somebody like in an important role drops out, that makes things a lot more difficult. Because like not everybody can do the grill on a Saturday rush.
Yep.
That is a very intense position to hold, especially in a fine dining restaurant when you got steaks and salmon and all kinds of other different things coming off the grill, and that's the longest and arguably most important part
Mhm.
of the process is those proteins. So when we have to kind of shuffle things around and kind of be a man down in one other area, that puts a lot of extra pressure on the rest of the crew working that shift.
What
So
was your favorite station to be on?
honestly, I did like the grill. The grill was fun. So I worked at Chef's Palette over there, 1010 and Kildare in South Raleigh, Apex, and they made everything from scratch. It was a lot of fun, but we basically had 5 stations. So we had pantry, which was in charge of like salads and desserts, and things that didn't need to be cooked, basically. Um, so that was where first started. That's kind of like the easiest station. Then there was the fry station. There was grill. There was saute. And then there is middle, which was we worked at a fine dining restaurant, so it was like plating and
Yeah.
the final touches on things going out. And theoretically, there's dish pit, which we had 2 guys on during the weekends.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, those 5 stations. The only one I didn't touch was saute. That was the hardest.
There you go.
That's using the pots and or the pans and stuff like that. Doing a lot of the sides. That was basically where majority of the sides came out of. Was that
And a
so?
kitchen is like a very well-connected orchestra.
Oh yeah,
Everybody's
yeah.
gotta know
Everybody has
when.
their part,
Yep.
and everybody has a part to play, and is very very streamlined. Everybody knew what they had to do. And usually like on the weekends, are like because I got trained on how to do other things like fry and middle and grill. Um, I was kind of like, and I was super interested in learning how to do those things, and they realized that. So on the weekends, I was actually pantry, partly because pantry kind of goes ebbs and flows. It's like really busy in the beginning with all the appetizers, like
No.
salads and things like that, and it's really busy at the end of the shift because of desserts. But that middle section, like during where the entrees are coming out, I'm kind of not doing much. So I was able to kind of float and help out other positions as necessary as kind of like a fill-in person. Sometimes I just need to help one of the chefs just throw things on the grill because we're getting a lot of steaks or something, or maybe prep things like get the plates ready for plating and helping middle out and doing things like that. So it was kind of like a catch-all position. I was able to if I wasn't doing anything, able to help out the other guys with their respective roles, especially if he was super busy, and sometimes it was. So
Yep.
it was cool to be able to provide that kind of support, um,
Now, yeah.
across the whole line.
Yeah. And for the people in that industry, it's in their blood. How did you get out of there and why didn't you make that a career decision?
That was a tough choice. The biggest thing for me was the lifestyle. So,
Yeah.
and especially in fine dining, you're working a dinner shift, and that's going to be, you like the typical day was getting in there like noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, depending on how much prep was needed. Dinner service started at 5. We, service from 5 to 9, and on weekends. And we close up shop. We probably get out of there like 10:30, 11. Typically. So there's your nights where everybody else is having fun. You're you're
Mhm.
working, and then of course your busiest days are holidays and weekends where
Yes.
everybody else has off, right? So you're kind of like working opposite of what rest of society does.
Yep.
So because of that, like for me, like the biggest driving point for me leaving is I absolutely loved it. I love the people I worked with. I love the job. I loved working in that industry. I most definitely will like probably go back at some point. But the biggest driving factor for me was more on a personal level was, at some point, like I want to have a family. I want to
Mm.
have kids. And seeing the problems that the head chef was going through with his family,
Yep.
like, kids come home from school, you're getting ready for service. You're not there,
Yep.
right? You come home late, they're already in bed, and you're working opposite of like where your kids are at. So I know like I want to be hopefully impactful to and growing up with my children at some point. So I can't do chef life and be a dad basically at the same time. And that was the toughest part for me is like acknowledging that and like, I can't make this a career because these other things are more important than my work life, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I had to step away from that. And then also like from the food industry perspective, having like, somebody that you care about, like it's also stressful on them unless they're also in the food industry and
Yep.
understand,
And you
right?
see that.
Like
Yep.
yeah, so like the relationships that last and when you're working in the food industry are with people that also are in the food
Yep.
industry
Yep.
and understand what it's like to go through all those things.
Yep.
Because if you don't have that connection with that person, then trying to explain why working in the kitchen is the way that it is impossible to for somebody on the outside to understand.
Yep. And when I do my prep work for the show, I always look for interesting things. So one last thing here for you. You have a brother and a sister. Each of their names begins with an R. Yours begins with an R. So why did that
Mhm.
pattern happen?
That's mainly my mom's doing, I think. I don't know. She wanted all of them to start. And the funny thing is, like, you think, oh, that's kind of cute, but then, like, I can't tell you how many times my mom and dad were like, oh, right. They get caught up trying to remember who they're talking to. So it's like, it's funny to see that. But also like, Royce is technically my middle name.
Okay.
So my first name is David, and named after my dad. My sister was number two. Her first name's Deborah, named after my mom. And of
Ah,
course, they ran out of parents when they got to my third brother, so they just gave him Dane.
okay. All right.
Which his name is Dane Riker Cormell. So we all share the initials DRC.
Ah,
So
gotcha.
it's
Okay.
um, which is fun. But yeah, as far as like naming stuff, like I,
Okay.
I couldn't tell you what her motivations were, but
Yeah, I've got a
it
friend of
it
mine
works.
for like 4 generations of his family on the male side. It's James, then their middle name, and they all go by their middle name, kinda like you
Hmm.
guys do, which is interesting, but they all have James as a first name, whether they're brothers, or not. So, which,
Yeah,
is interesting. So, I always like name stories. There's always usually something good out of that, so I like
yeah.
that.
I
So,
was I was almost the third,
okay.
but my mom was like, "No, we're not doing
Yeah. Yeah.
that." So
Which is
my dad's a junior.
Yeah, which is another question. Do you want a junior? Yeah, does junior want a junior? Stuff like that. So, all
Yeah, yeah.
right, folks, we've been putting Royce's phone number up on the screen here during the show. So the first thing we're going to ask people to do, Royce, in the next day or two is just go into their attic and look for discolored insulation. If they don't, if
Or
they
or discolored plywood, that works
okay,
too. But usually insulation is a lot easier to spot.
okay. If they get a chance to look at their roof, great, but they'll tell more by going in their attic.
Yeah, yeah.
And
If there's an actual problem, yeah.
if they do, all houses have attics.
Some attics are inaccessible.
Okay.
So that makes it kind of difficult. So you really don't have a choice but to wait till something happens. A
Okay.
good example of that is a vaulted ceiling. Vaulted ceiling is right up against the exterior roof,
Yep.
so there's no way you can reasonably check that. And if there's an issue there, it's also inherently a lot faster to show up as well. So it's kind of, you know, uh, there's upsides and downsides to those situations. And one other thing too, if somebody is asking you to do spray foam installation, I would highly recommend not doing spray foam installation. It's great for applications like, in basements and things like that, but for on the other underside of an attic, you're covering up the possibility of finding out leaks ahead of time.
All
And
right.
spray foam insulation will just capture all of that stuff, right where, especially if they're spraying it directly onto the decking, which unfortunately a lot of those guys do. If they're doing it correctly, they'll put in those flutes that create space
Yep.
in between the decking, but a lot of those guys don't. So it just makes it a lot difficult to do leak diagnostics with spray foam insulation because I can't see what's going on.
Yep.
And it also makes your roof replacement later more expensive,
Oh,
because if there are leaks, they're stuck on the inside of that insulation, and it'll cause the decking to rot unknown to you. And then
okay.
when roof replacement time comes, we have no choice but to replace rotted decking because we can't nail into rotted wood. So if you have a house that's full, blown in, like, spray foam insulation on the inside, you could be having, issues all over the place and never know. And then, hey, a lot of extra money when it comes to doing full replacement time, out of pocket, just replacing rotted decking.
All
So,
right, folks, and that's why you call experts like Royce and Caitlin and Cameron at Honor Roofing. We've been putting his number up there. Please give them a call if you have any questions. You need to make sure that's taken care of. Your home is your biggest investment, so make sure you have the foundation and the roof taken care of so it'll last a lot longer and cost you a lot less money. Royce, enjoyed having you on the show today. Good luck with everything. 2025 off to a good start so far?
oh yeah, absolutely.
Good.
I'm enjoying it.
All right. Well, glad to appreciate you coming in on the show. Good luck with everything. And we will see everybody next time on Capital to the Coast BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com and DeltaForce.net.